UFC London. These are the full card predictions and the betting breakdown. Main event, the return of Tom Aspinall. He fights Marcin Tybura. I'm going to talk about each of the matchups on the card, so make sure you guys smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure to share the video as well. Also note, I will be live for the entire UFC London fight card, 12 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Make sure you guys tune into the Fight Companion. And let's get into the first fight of the night. Is Jafel Filho versus Daniel Barez. I'm going to pick Jafel Filho to get a win in this matchup over Barez. I do view it as a pretty difficult fight. Barez is a guy that's like kind of dangerous with his kickboxing. I was impressed with some recent wins that he has. But if you do dig into the actual opposition, a 14-12 fighter, a 6-9 fighter, a 7-9 fighter, a 10-9-1 fighter. So he looks really good in these matchups, but the combined record of all those guys is like 37-39-1. It's pretty mid-tier to low mid-tier opposition. This is a big jump up in competition to fight Filho. If you look, Barez had a pretty back-and-forth fight with Carlos Hernandez on the Contender Series. He's a fast-starting kickboxer and honestly a pretty sharp striker. Filho, I do believe, is going to have the grappling advantage. The ground skills are going to favor him. I also like that he was just in there against Muhammad Mokaev, who's one of, I think, the most highly regarded flyweight prospects in the sport right now. I also feel with Barez's fast style to start out the gate quickly, as we get into the later stages, I think Filho could capitalize, pressuring him against the cage, working to takedowns, dominant positioning on the ground. I feel like Filho, he does have decent enough stand-up here. I'd say his kickboxing is pretty competent. It's not as flashy and maybe not as slick as Barez, but at the end of the day, as good as Barez is looking in the last four, it is mid to low tier opposition. Filho is a very big jump up in competition, and I think that he's going to get it done in this matchup here. I think he gets his first win in the UFC with this fight here. I mean, you're starting off fighting Mokaev. That's a nightmare matchup. And then he had an impressive win. He stopped Roybert Echeverria. I think he would be live for a submission in this fight, but it's not like Filho can't finish fights with his hands. He's got a bit of power, especially if Barez slows in the second or third round. I also have to say the red flag with Barez, he's 34, making his debut in the UFC, and then being 34, fighting 4 lower level guys previously. Filho's going to be the pick for me. I'm going to say he's live for a late finish by sub probably, but I mean TKO is not out of this world impossible. But the official call, I'm thinking decision for Filho. But just he's so nasty with his submission skills. Like, how can I count him out by sub? Sub or decision is kind of the method of victory. But decision seems kind of likely because I feel like Barez is pretty fucking game. But we're picking Filho for the win. As far as the odds, Filho's a slight favorite, but it's an even money fight. -113 Filho, -107 Barez. I'd say it's like a coin flip matchup that Filho has a bit of an advantage on, and the line is pretty damn close. I don't think he'd be an awful money line attack. I see it as competitive, but Filho having some advantages in the higher level competition as of recent. Granted, like you look 5 fights back, it's 5 years ago. He wasn't active for a while, but went over Vincia Salvador, who's in the UFC, Roybert Echeverria, that was on the Contender, that was impressive, and then nearly beat him Mokaev at one point, and then, to get finished in that fight. But Filho's good. I'm picking him to win. I like him here in this matchup against Daniel Barez. Should be a pretty good scrap. I'll go Filho to pull it off. Starting the card off with him. Next fight, it is Bruna Brasil versus Shauna Bannon. I'm going to pick Shauna Bannon in this fight. And I guess at times it's scary to pick undefeated females making their way up into the UFC. I know Bruna Brasil wasn't undefeated in her debut, but she was a prospect that had more steam on her, and she got crushed starting it off against Denise Gomes. And then Gomes absolutely demolished Yasmin Jauregui. So that's kind of a loss that we can get over. Shauna, I like the potential. I like the style. I feel like she brings pretty fast hands with pop. She's definitely the better boxer of the two. Brazil's a very karate-based kickboxer. I don't want to say she's overly stiff, but she is a little bit stiff with her stand-up, and I think that does limit her explosiveness and speed. She's at a disadvantage with that. I feel like Bannon, too, something I like is from all positions on the ground. She's active, either looking for get-ups, reversals, or submissions. She has that dog in her. I think she has more dog in her than Bruna Brasil. I'm going to pick Shauna Bannon to win a decision. It would be a hard fight. I don't know if she has the stopping power like a Denise Gomes to get Brasil out of there. So I think Bannon's going to win it on the cards. And also note something for Bannon. She's an inch shorter, but she brings in a 3.5-inch reach advantage, which in the boxing range, that's pretty substantial. Though Brasil has a karate-esque style of kickboxing. She's not overly dangerous with her kicks, and I think Bannon's going to be able to crowd the kicking of Brasil and touch her up with punches. But I do believe it's going to end up going longer. I feel like Bannon by decision is going to be the official prediction for this fight. Now, looking at the lines, Bannon's an underdog at plus 115. Hey, I'm happy I got a women's underdog for the first female fight of the night. Brasil, minus 135. Give me Shauna Bannon. I think she'll beat Bruna Brasil. She'll outdog her, and she'll beat her on the cards. Bannon for the win. I'm going to say judges scorecards, and she lands more significant strikes. And if they do engage in grappling, she's going to be pretty, live there too and dangerous, actively scrambling, moving, and looking for the finish. Next fight, fun matchup of strikers in the lightweight division. It's Chris Duncan versus Yanal Ashmouz. I'm really looking forward to this fight, and I'll tell you, it's one that I sat on for a bit. Chris Duncan coming off of, a pretty major win against Omar Morales, competitive fight. Yanal Ashmouz absolutely destroyed Sam Patterson, so I gotta pick Ashmouz for the reason that Chris Duncan has shown a lot of hitability in the past in big fights. I mean, he got knocked out by Slava. He got hurt on the Contender Series in which he won against Charlie Campbell, and then he was even hurt against Omar Morales in his official UFC debut. I feel like Ashmouz can definitely sting him with punches and hurt him on the feet. Duncan's a guy that's also kind of power punch heavy, but he's not as slick as Ashmouz, nor do I think he has the same thud in his hands. I feel like if Ashmouz finds, a clean overhand, it could be damaging. Some type of counter hook could also land, especially if Duncan is squaring off to look to engage. Ashmouz, too, has shown that he's pretty competent with his grappling offense and defense. I know his debut was real short, but you can look at him fighting in PFL on the Challenger Series there. I feel like Yanal Ashmouz gets Chris Duncan out of there in this fight. Duncan's going to bring the fire. Both young guys, 28 versus 30, unbeaten versus just one loss. So it's a cool matchup to see. I just think Ashmouz is going to get to him and hurt him. Omar Morales was able to hurt Chris Duncan with his hands, and I don't think that Omar Morales has the same speed on his punches as a Yanal Ashmouz. So now I got Ashmouz with speed in his hands, Ashmouz with a bit of power in his hands. I know Omar Morales is like a fairly powerful guy with his kickboxing, but just note, to me, he doesn't have the same quickness, right? So Ashmouz gets to the target faster. I can see him putting Duncan's lights out with a quick strike that finds home, especially if they start really engaging. I do expect Duncan, when he gets stung, to look to grapple a bit and then be met with a ton of resistance by Yanal Ashmouz. I got to go with Yanal Ashmouz, the Red Fox. I remember breaking down the Sam Patterson fight, and I actually pick-flipped at the weigh-ins after the face-off to Ashmouz by a knockout. So I'm going to ride the Ashmouz knockout side. I think that he's got the heavy enough hands to get Chris Duncan out of there, and he's going to KO him in a pretty back-and-forth fight early. Probably going that under 2.5. Duncan at minus 118 as the favorite. Yanal Ashmouz minus 102, upwards of plus 100. Slight underdog. Yanal Ashmouz is going to be my knockout prediction for this fight here. Next fight on the card, ladies going after it. It's Ketlen Vieira versus Pannie Kianzad. Yeah, I'm definitely going to pick Ketlen Vieira in this fight. Kianzad has decently quick boxing, and she's pretty light on her feet. I like her movement in her striking, and I mean, she's strong in the clinch too, but not to the level of Vieira. Vieira is a lot more, I think, of an imposing physical specimen, and I think she's also more dangerous with her Muay Thai. I can see her hurting Kianzad inside of the clinch with knees and elbows. I also can see her just wearing on her against the cage. Power punching advantage a little bit towards Vieira, though I don't think she has, that absolute absolute Chris Cyborg dynamite hands. She has a bit of thud, a little bit wide with her punches at times, and I know Kianzad will also shoot straight a bit more, but I do think Ketlen Vieira with bullying pressure has Kianzad backed up, and I feel like Vieira should be on a win streak. I mean, her losses against Yana Santos and Raquel Pennington, for my scorecards, are incorrect. She could easily be on a good win streak here. I mean, if you look, the loss, Irene Aldana. So it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row for, Ketlen Vieira, if not for, in my opinion, some iffy judges' scorecards. Now, Kianzad is fairly tough, and I do think she has enough skill to go long. I don't think that Ketlen Vieira is going to get her out of there. I'm going to say that Ketlen Vieira wins it on the scorecards. She's more than a 2-1 favorite now. She's sitting at... Actually, no, she's less than 2-1. It's come down. Opened at minus 325, but it's minus 162 now. And Kianzad plus 142 as the dog. I really like the Ketlen Vieira side to win. I like her imposing her will. I think she's a physically stronger girl. She's the heavier puncher of the two, and I think she is going to back up Kianzad and control a lot of this fight and get herself a W here. And I mean, she would definitely be in the title picture if she would have got the decision over Pennington. Unfortunately, no. She's kind of in that rebuild zone, but a clean win here over Kianzad will definitely be good for her stock. So we're going with Ketlen Vieira for the W. And actually, quickly, I want to bring up the most recent loss for Kianzad is also Raquel Pennington, who Ketlen Vieira recently fought, the queen of the clinch, even though I thought Vieira deserved the win in that fight. Next matchup is a strange one. It's Bryan Barberena moving up to 185 to fight Makhmud Muradov. As soon as I saw this fight, I'm like, this is odd to me. Bryan Barberena at 185, I really don't love. Even though I'm not high on Muradov, I got to go with him to win. I got to go with the OV side. He's a pretty powerful and dangerous kickboxer. And I feel like he's going to have a bit of a physical strength. And I also think grappling pressure advantage. At the end of the day, I know he's not necessarily known for his wrestling, but I can see just his overall size really being a factor in this fight with Barberena. I mean, if you look at Bryan Barberena's last two, Gunnar Nelson subbed him and Dos Anjos subbed him. So there's obviously a clear path to victory fighting somebody like Barberena. I know that Makhmud Muradov does not have the same chops/credentials in the grappling department of either one of those guys, but he's got to be thinking in this fight here, if Barberena is finding any type of striking success, his strength and, just physical attributes should be a factor for him to potentially drag a Barberena to the floor. Now, southpaw Barberena's got fast hands. I think he's quick inside with his punches. Muradov from the kickboxing range is going to be better, and he's going to be a bit heavier handed with his strikes. I've never been high on Muradov, so it's interesting to see him now fighting a former welterweight in Bryan Barberena. Odd matchup. I think Muradov does get the win. I'm kind of feeling like it's going to end up being a decision. Barberena will probably make it look a lot closer than the lines have it. So, I'm going to caution you guys going out there having Muradov as like the lock parlay piece, because I recognize Bryan Barberena is a junkyard dog that's always going to fight for your money. Looking at Barberena, he's plus 230, Muradov minus 270. That line's a bit wide for me, man. I wouldn't touch Muradov. Money line. I really don't like him in a parlay either. I feel like Bryan Barberena, if you told me you're betting him as a dog, I'd say you're not crazy at all. I could see a third-round TKO for him of just Muradov unable to really be successful with anything, winning early but using a lot of movement and then gassing later. And Bryan Barberena, the naturally faster and, lighter guy, able to find some big strikes late. But it's not like Bryan Barberena is known for KO power. He's got good flurries and punch combinations, but he's not a one-shot thud type of guy. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can really even do much damage to a guy as large as Makhmud Muradov. And I mean, if you look at Muradov's losses, it's in the grappling department. Barel dominated him with grappling, and he got submitted by Mearshart. Fighting a striker like Barberena, I think Muradov should be able to get it done. But I really respect the toughness of Bryan Barberena. I can't even say Bryan Barberena's name, man. I call him Barberena. Let's just call him Barberena. I'm calling him just by his fucking last name at this point. Muradov's kickboxing is good. It's just not overly impressive. And then I got junkyard dog Bryan Barberena coming up from 170. An odd matchup here. I'm going to pick Muradov, but I'm not a big fan of the Muradov betting side in this fight here. Next fight on the card, fun matchup, heavyweights. It's Mick Parkin versus Jamal Pogues. This is another one that I really sat on for a bit because Pogues is pretty fucking quick with his hands and he times his takedowns fairly well. And Mick Parkin is like a big, strong, raw talent heavyweight. I mean, he's fairly skilled from the fights that we've seen outside of Contender Series, but he looked very brawl heavy on Contender Series. It's like, do I want to go England in this fight just to, ride with the crowd, or does Pogues get it done? I mean, I wrote down Pogues. I'm going to stick with him to do it, but I'll tell you guys, I don't love it. With Pogues, I'd say, man, he's not a world beater, man, but he's skilled and experienced. He has a win over Josh Parisian, who honestly, I feel like Mick Parkin is a better version of Josh Parisian. And then I look at Pogues' experience, right? Taking on outside of the UFC, Taylor Johnson, who's a good Bellator fighter, Jordan Young, the late Jordan Young, rest in peace, who was a good fighter in PFL, and then Alex Polizzi, who's another good Bellator fighter. All those guys at light heavyweight. He was fighting at light heavyweight, and then he decided to go up, and what he's noticing is he has a speed advantage over these slower heavyweights. I feel like Mick Parkin is better than the Josh Parisians of the world, but still more of a back-end heavyweight. He throws big punches and looks to pressure. He uses his frame well. Now, at times, he can be calculated, but in this matchup here, I feel like Parkin potentially ends up on his back, and I think that Pogues' jab could be something that works for him here. I like Pogues to pull it off. Might be a snooze fest decision for Pogues in this fight. Looking at the odds, Pogues is a minus 135 favorite. And then on the other side, Mick Parkin, the plus 115 dog. I'm going to ride Pogues to pull it off. And I think he beats the prospect in Mick Parkin, who I just think at 6-0 hasn't fought the good enough guys yet. Even his win on Contender Series, Neves, he gave up, man. Neves gave up. And he's only 5-0. Pogues now 10-3. More than double the experience of Parkin. I think that's a viable factor, and that should help aid him to victory here. Next fight on the card, it's Marc Diakiese versus Yoel Alvarez. I'm picking Yoel Alvarez to win this fight. I think that he's going to do work on Marc Diakiese. Diakiese's always been a talented fighter that just hasn't lived up to the potential because I think that he looks more impressive with his technique than his actual, effectiveness is with those techniques. He's a real good athlete, but lately he's been using wrestling to control fighters. You go to the ground with Yoel Alvarez, you're in for some trouble because he's a very long guy who throws up a lot of submission attempts. And then when you look at the striking for Alvarez, he's a 6'3" finisher. He's mean. He's got an upright kickboxing style where he throws a lot of power. He was hurting Thiago Moises in their fight, and I feel like Alvarez could definitely put it on a Marc Diakiese here. I think he's going to get a submission win. We've seen Diakiese tapped out before. I'm going Yoel Alvarez to win by submission in this fight. Now, as far as the odds for the matchup, Alvarez is a minus 170 favorite. I think he definitely deserves that tag. And then Marc Diakiese, the plus 145 dog. I got to ride with Alvarez. I think he's getting it done. I mean, his loss to Arman Sarukian, he got pulverized a bit, but it's Arman Sarukian. It's a nightmare matchup. It's totally different than a Marc Diakiese. And I mean, if you look, Borashev win, Hadzovic win. Neither one of those are like jumping out the page impressive. Whereas you look at Alvarez, I mean, at the least he beat Thiago Moises. These other wins may be less impressive, but W over Moises is a good one. Only loss in the UFC. Arman Sarukian, Demiris Magulov. Better guys than Marc Diakiese, and I think Alvarez does find the submission here. I'll say that. He gets it done. I feel like in the second round by submission. So we're going Alvarez for the win by sub. Next fight on the card, Danny Roberts versus Johnny Parsons. I'm going to pick Danny Roberts in this fight because Johnny Parsons is built more like a chubby lightweight. I don't think that he should be fighting in the UFC at 170. I think he can cut 15 pounds. There's visible body fat. I feel like if you look at Parsons' last fight, he's getting touched up on Contender Series by Solomon Renfro a lot, and then he wins a competitive decision there. He's damn tough, and he's willing to take a lot of shots and still come back. Danny Roberts, though, I think is due for a win, especially by a knockout. But we got to throw the red flag out there to the people that he's 36. And also he is coming off back-to-back losses, being to Trinaldo and to Jack Della Maddalena. Granted, you know, Jack Della knocking you out, no shame, especially if you're a striker like Danny Roberts. He's going to be faster being Danny Roberts than Parsons. I think he hits harder. I respect the toughness of Parsons, but I do think that Roberts is going to end up KOing him here. I feel like Parsons, you know, debut fight, taking on a guy with this much UFC experience, I just think it's not going to go well. And now you finally give, you know, hot chocolate, a matchup that favors him, right? 5'9" to 6'1", 69-inch reach to 74, 8-3 record, not a ton of experience, isn't overly impressive even in, you know, his Contender Series win. I think Danny Roberts is taking him out. Give me Danny Roberts to do it by a KO. As far as the odds here for this one, close money, even line, -106 Roberts, Parsons -114. I think that Danny Roberts has this fight. I think he'll take it home for the English folk. Yeah, Roberts to win by knockout over Parsons. Next fight on the card, it's the featured prelim of the night. It's Davy Grant versus Daniel Marcos. I feel like this is going to be such a fucking barn burner. These guys are bringing it. I got to pick Marcos to win. I'm high on him as a prospect. He fought Brandon Lewis on Contender Series, and he picked him apart and showed some high-level kickboxing technique. And then he debuts, and he bullied Simon Oliveira. Now, note that Davy Grant is junkyard dog tough, one of the toughest guys on the roster, especially at bantamweight. 1-1 with Marlon Chito Vera. Win over Rafael Assunção last fight out. He's got a good amount of experience inside of the UFC. He's been with the promotion forever. But if you look at his actual technical skill set, he's a lot more wide and wild with his punches, whereas Marcos is technical and likes to come down the center, especially with his front kicks. I think he's a more versatile striker. He's also going to be able to control the pace of this fight and pick Grant apart. Now, I do think Davy Grant's still going to look to bring fire and have a couple moments in this fight. Notably, Davy Grant is incredibly tough. I do think Marcos could have the chops to finish him off, but I have to give respect to Grant, especially at home in the UK, in London. Give me Daniel Marcos on the judges' scorecards in what is going to be a breakout performance and a fight that really jumps him up in the rankings. I feel like he has a tool set of somebody inside of the top 15. He's very calculated, and he should win against a veteran like Davy Grant. Daniel Marcos is a slight favorite in this fight. He actually opened as an ever so slight dog. He's now -135 is the favorite. Davy Grant, the +120 underdog. I think Marcos can do it. And I know some people might not be sold on Marcos just yet, but if you actually watch the way that he fights, it's very cerebral. And then you add into account his technical skill set that he has, it's high level to me. I just see him as a guy that can outstrike a Davy Grant. He's technically better, so as long as he has the dog in him, and from what I've seen, he definitely does, I think he's beaten Davy Grant in a hard-fought decision, but he does have some significant moments, and I definitely think there's going to be some clean strikes that land for him, but Grant's freak toughness is just going to allow him to go long. So give me Daniel Marcos on the judges' scorecards. Not impossible that he finds a KO, but I like Marcos by decision better. Moneyline's your best bet if you're betting it. Let's jump to the main card. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. It's Lerone Murphy versus Josh Kulabayao. I think Josh Kulabayao is beating him. I'm going to pick Kulabayao to win. I feel like Lerone Murphy is a pretty well-rounded guy and a good athlete, but the 12-0-1 record, I think, finally has to go. He's overrated, man. And on paper, 12-0-1 looks incredible. I don't think he has the skill set of somebody that's going to be running through the top 15. He's 32 years of age. Kulabayao's the younger guy. He's a rangier kickboxer. And you know what? I know Kulabayao's a guy that's willing to take one to land one. I can see him landing clean on Lerone Murphy here. I see a lot of competitive striking exchanges between the two, but I do think Lerone Murphy is going to be the one that engages in the wrestling, but he's going to be met by, good resistance by somebody like Josh Culibao. I feel like we're going long. Culibao and Murphy, very close and competitive in the striking department. I feel like Culibao's just a bit more explosive, but Murphy maybe a little bit better with the straights down the center line. Also might be just a bit physically stronger, but not with the wrestling chops to garner significant control time. So I'm going to say Culibao wins an upset split decision over Lerone Murphy in a very competitive main card opener. It's minus 140 for Lerone Murphy. Culibao, the plus 130 dog. I'm going for the dog. I'm going Culibao on a split decision. Next fight on the main card, Jai Herbert versus Fares Ziam. Look at the age difference, 26 to 35. But outside of that, I mean, these guys are built fairly similar. The same height, but there is a slight 2-inch reach advantage for Herbert. I'm going to pick Fares Ziam. I think that he's going to have an advantage in the wrestling and overall grappling. If you look at pure stand-up, I think Herbert's going to be a little bit quicker, but Fares Ziam is a pretty competent kickboxer. Both guys come from kickboxing bases, but I just believe Ziam to be more efficient in using grappling as well, and I feel like that is going to aid him into victory here. Even though Jai Herbert is probably a bit more powerful and quick on the feet, Ziam is going to have the technical knowledge to match that type of quickness and power, and I think he will be threatening with takedowns, which will also then open up striking on the feet if he is unsuccessful in getting this fight to the floor. And then you also look at the gym that Ziam's training at, Kill Cliff FC, and then you look at his age, just 26 years old. It's got to be Ziam to win. I expect constant improvements. He already looks like a pretty decent prospect, but only 26. And now fighting Jai Herbert, who I'd say at 35, we've seen what he has to offer. Draw with Ludovic last time out. Did beat a Kyle Nelson, which is fairly impressive. Hurt Ilia Topuria, but was still knocked out. Kama-worthy knockout, and then a loss by sub to Hanato Moicano. I think Ziam striking to engage in the grappling is going to be a very smart game plan for him here, and I'm expecting him to find takedowns, specifically clinch work, then leading into trips for Fares Ziam, specifically too against the cage. So Fares Ziam for the win. I think he's going to beat Jai Herbert in this fight. Looking at the odds, Ziam's a bit of a favorite, though he opened as an underdog. Jai Herbert, the plus 115 underdog. I think Ziam is the right guy to be the favorite here. I think he's got the style and the evolving skill set to beat a Jai Herbert. So give me Fares Ziam. I'm going to say unanimous decision. Next fight on the card, it is Andre Muniz versus Paul Craig. It's Paul Craig's debut at 185 pounds. I'll be honest, when I heard he was dropping to 185, I'm thinking to myself, how can a guy this big comfortably make 185 pounds? But I'm looking through the Instagram and he looks healthy. I'm picking Paul Craig to win his debut at middleweight over Andre Muniz. Both of these guys are tall, lanky submission specialists, but I'll tell you this much. I do think Paul Craig is the more heavy-handed foe between these two. He's a bit better in the striking department. I would say both guys have rather clunky striking styles, but as I said, more power with Paul Craig. He's naturally the bigger guy, naturally the stronger guy, and also used to taking on more dangerous opposition at 205 pounds. Paul Craig does have a submission win over now vacant title, but the former champion, Jamal Hill. I feel like in this fight here, he doesn't have to worry about Muniz's striking. He can mix it up on the feet and actually land with Andre Muniz. When they engage in the grappling, I think Paul Craig is going to be incredibly tough to deal with. He does have the more impressive physical tools, right? 6'3" to 6'1", granted a little bit of a reach advantage for Muniz, but I don't think that matters much because he's really not an efficient striker. I feel like Paul Craig is going to put it on him. Brendan Allen last time out found the rear naked choke on the submission specialist, Andre Muniz. I'm thinking Paul Craig is live by submission like that too. It's going to be interesting to see what type of game plan Paul Craig employs here for this matchup. Is he willing to allow Andre Muniz into his full guard and play from there? Obviously, it can be incredibly difficult to tap somebody from full guard bottom with the caliber of jiu-jitsu that Muniz has. So I would rather see Paul Craig employ some pressure, even some striking, and then look to get the back of Andre Muniz, maybe against the cage, maybe in some type of scramble and transition on the floor. I do think best method of victory would be Paul Craig winning by rear naked. I'm going to pick Paul Craig to win by submission. I do think specifically he finds a rear naked choke. The second and third round is going to be a real interesting round 2 and 3, right? Because the fatigue sets in from Muniz, especially if he's getting touched up on the feet a little bit. I think Paul Craig, if he makes weight and he looks healthy and he fights well, he's a player at 185 pounds for certain with the amount of submission skills that he has in a division that's kind of ran mostly by strikers. So give me Paul Craig for the win. As far as the odds, Paul Craig is a fairly big underdog, plus 188. He opened at plus 160. Muniz minus 223, the favorite. I think Paul Craig has this fight. I'm going Paul Craig to finish Andre Muniz. Wouldn't it be crazy if he put the punches together and got a knockout? As slow as Muniz is with his boxing, I could see Craig landing it. Now, both these guys have some legendary sub-wins. I mean, Jacare Souza, he snapped his arm being Andre Muniz, and then Paul Craig obviously destroying the arm of Jamal Hill, recently beat Nikita Krylov, was able to knock out Shogun Rua, so he does have punching power. I'm going Paul Craig. He wins. Next fight on the card is the featured bout of the night. It's Nathaniel Wood versus Andre Fili. I'm going to pick Nathaniel Wood to win this fight, but I do recognize he has to get over a bit of a hurdle. He's 5'6" to Andre Fili's 5'11", so 5-inch height advantage. The same goes for the reach, 5 inches in reach for Fili, 74 to 69-inch reach. But I feel like we got to say something about Wood. He's the more technical and precise striker. He's more quick. He's more athletic. He's more explosive. Fili, though, is long, as we've said, and he's dog tough for certain. I feel like Wood is going to be able to overcome those obstacles there, and I also expect him to be chopping at the legs of an Andre Fili in this fight here. The biggest thing that Wood must be wary of is a counter straight from Andre Fili. If he lands at the end of his punch, there's obviously going to be a bit of sting on it. But for me, I see Wood as the up-and-coming contender. I don't see him losing in his home country. I see him having a good performance against a real OG vet in Andre Fili at this point here. So give me Nathaniel Wood to pass a tough test against Andre Fili. Does he get him out of there? That's something that I've been asking myself. I'd love to see him get a knockout of Fili, but a lot easier said than done. And you see, some nice decisions for Wood. He's not taking everybody out that he touches. So I'm going to go Nathaniel Wood by unanimous decision on the cards. Wood is a minus 185 favorite to Fili at plus 160 as the dog. I like Nathaniel Wood to win. I think this is a good showcase matchup for him, and it's going to be a hard test, but he will pass. Nathaniel Wood, he gets it done. Co-main event of the evening, Molly McCann versus Julia Stoliarenko. So I'm going to pick Molly McCann, but I'm going to say a couple things. No idea really why this is the co-main event as far as, looking at it from a rankings perspective, looking at it, from who's in contendership perspective. The reason, I guess, that it is the co-main event is Molly McCann's got that Paddy Pimblett rub. She's connected with that fan base. It's a fight that's in London. I guess it makes sense that they put her in the co-main for the hype. Stoliarenko, her opponent, is incredibly mid, but she still is a body. She still throws strikes back, and she is taller and longer. She's 5'7" to Molly McCann's 5'4", and she has a 69-inch reach to Molly McCann's only 62-inch reach, but definitely more power on Molly Meatball's side. She's also, I think, more dog tough and physically stronger. It's one of those interesting fights, though, because Stoliarenko is such a big underdog that people are going to look at it. It's impossible that she loses here. Looking at the lines, she's plus 210 now. It's come down a bit. She opened up at what? Plus 300, and then Molly McCann opened at minus 400. She's now minus 250. Molly McCann shouldn't be more than a 2-1 favorite in this fight, really. This is just one of those overblown lines. Last time, Stoliarenko, she got beaten up by Chelsea Chandler and broken in that fight. I really don't think, especially in a striking matchup, because let's be honest, Stoliarenko, majority of her game is going to be striking. Molly McCann on the other side, majority of her game is striking. She's not going to break against a Stoliarenko, but I feel like it's going to end up looking closer than the odds have it listed at. I am going to predict Molly McCann with a second or third round TKO of Stoliarenko in a pretty back and forth fight, but minus 250 is too wide. Minus 400 was crazy to see it open at that. It's like Molly McCann is from Dagestan at this point, and she's not. But note that Molly McCann's matchups that you're going to notice her struggle significantly in, grapplers. Erin Blanchfield destroyed her on the ground. When she's fighting strikers, she knocks out a Hannah Goldie. She knocks out a Luana Carolina. She beats a Ji Yoon Kim. And then Laura Fritzen lost now 2.5 years ago. We're looking a while back. Stoliarenko, you see all red on the screen. Yana Santos beat her. Julia Villa subbed her. Alexis Davis beats her. She did beat Jessica Rose Clark by armbar, but Rose Clark is no longer even with the UFC, and she's super suspect for submission losses. And then Chelsea Chandler really fucked her up. So I think Molly McCann wins, but I want to caution you guys that the odds are a bit on the wide side, and 5-4 to 5-7. It's like not like Stoliarenko has zero chance. She's just not that good. She's not good. She's okay at best, I would say. 10-7-1, and then 13-5 for Molly McCann. So I got to go with Molly Meatballs to get the win. They're trying to give her, a feed me, give me matchup. Stoliarenko's being used as the opponent here, and I'm going to say Molly McCann does beat her, but she's still got a body across from her that's going to look to slug back. Main event of the evening. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We have Tom Aspinall versus Marcin Tybura. My prediction for this fight here is Tom Aspinall wins, and I do think he is going to get the KO over Marcin Tybura in this fight. He is a significantly better boxer than Marcin. I've always felt like Marcin Tybura has had pretty average to sub-average boxing. His kicks are okay, but nothing spectacular. Really where he shines is his grit and toughness and his grappling. And then you look at Tom Aspinall, who's honestly incredibly slick with his jiu-jitsu. Check a common opponent. Alexander Volkov, first round submission, straight arm lock for Tom Aspinall. Alexander Volkov, unanimous decision loss for Marcin Tybura. Now, I'm not using MMA math to make my prediction here. Aspinall is just way better. But when you look at the matchups and, Tybura known for ground skills, but Aspinall is just so much superior everywhere. This is a very one-sided fight. I think it's a showcase fight for Tom Aspinall coming back from, a devastating injury. His knee gave out against Curtis Blades. Now it's 11 months ago, so nearly a year ago. And now we're back in London. Tom Aspinall gets another main event. He's put in against a bit of a step down in competition in Marcin Tybura, but a fight that I think he can use as a showcase. Tybura beating Blagoy last time out and Romanov prior to that. I think Tom Aspinall is going to hurt Tybura on the feet. Tybura is getting a lot of respect for his toughness as of recent, and he's taken some big punches against decent strikers, but he still has KO losses. I mean, Augusto Sakai knocked him out in 59 seconds. I think Tom Aspinall is going to hurt Tybura on the feet, and he's going to have the confidence to follow up, taking the fight to the ground and beating him up there too. It also wouldn't blow my mind if Aspinall wins by submission. I expect Aspinall inside of the distance. Officially, I will call an Aspinall knockout, but inside of the distance would probably be the better prop here. And I also think under 2.5 rounds could be very live. Let me see if that under 2.5. No, we only got under 1.5. We got a 5-round fight, and they're giving us under 1.5. Minus 145 for under 1.5. Probably goes under 1.5, but I'd much rather play under 2.5. Minus 425 Aspinall money line. He deserves to be 4-1. He's going to win this fight. Marcin Tybura, the plus 325 dog. It's a showcase fight for Tom Aspinall. I see him as way better than Marcin Tybura everywhere. Tybura's best aspect is the grappling, and Aspinall is way slicker. Aspinall is being put into this spot as a showcase fight to set up a potential championship 2024 with either a fight maybe against the likes of, John Jones, or more likely a fight for the vacant belt against somebody like a Sergey Pavlovich. I'll drop a video talking about this matchup more in detail, probably tomorrow or the next day. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel for the individual breakdown for this main event matchup. But I'm going Tom Aspinall to win. I think he has this fight over Marcin Tybura, and I think big things are coming in the future for him as well. That is UFC Fight Night London. It's a pretty damn good card. Definitely a big step up in entertainment value from the lull week that we had with UFC Vegas 77, which, you know, honestly, let me take that back. The entertainment value was still good of Vegas 77. It's just the name value was not good of that card. This is, you know, a much more significant name-heavy card. There's some savages fighting at UFC London, and I expect nothing less when the UFC goes to London. So as I said earlier in the video, I'll be live 12 p.m. Eastern time, full card fight companion. So make sure you guys tune into that one. I hope you guys enjoyed the full card predictions. Make sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and turn those post notifications on too. Definitely let me know your predictions in the comments. Do you agree with most of my picks? Do you think I'm crazy? Let me know, especially your main event take. Throw it down. I know everybody's picking Aspinall. I'd be surprised to see any strong confidence Tybura bettors or pickers. But let me know, does Aspinall get it done in the first round by knockout? Or are you guys liking that sub side? Much love, my people. I appreciate you all for watching. If you got nothing to say in the comments, as always, drop a W in the chat as well. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace, everybody.